I don't even like to argue about an experience. So, but here is what I say all the time. If the experience of these failed politicians is what you are looking for, the experience in stealing, the experience in killings, the experience in propaganda, the experience in deception is what you are looking for. I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of experience. But if you are looking for someone with solid experience in doing what is right, solid character that has withstood the test of time for 30 years, then you have me on your corner, and I will defend that any day. So I'm better experienced than most Nigerian leaders. I've been around for as long as so many of them have been around. Nigeria is, this is a way to make it easy for people. Nigeria has been around for 58 years as a democratic nation. I have been engaged with the political process in Nigeria for 30 out of 58 years. That is more than half of Nigeria's existence. And they started in 1989.
So, talking about Hope 92, yes. That's when you started. Hope 93, yes. That's when it all started.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't when it started. That was when I think most people came to see me on the national stage.
Okay.
I had been.
That's when you came to prominence.
Yes, nationally. But I've been a student activist even before then. I was the University of Lagos Student Union president in 1992. Between 1992 and 1994, I was Student Union president at the University of Lagos. So I've been around.
Okay. Remembering what happened in Hope 93. Bashir Tofa,
yes,
the person that ran against MKO,
Abiola,
actually drove to his polling station,
yes,
did not cast his vote, and then drove away.
Yes.
And Nigerians felt he already knew that the election would be annulled anyway, so there was no point voting. So Nigerians want to know, Omoyele, who are you working for? Who are your sponsors? Are you going to step down for APC or you are going to step down for PDP? What's your game plan?
I'm in this race to help step down the APCs and the PDPs of this country. I'm here to retire godfathers. And who are my sponsors? My sponsors are people who are watching us from all over the world and in this country. It's the first candidate in the history of this country running for election who is raising money transparently and publicly through crowdfunding and also through a local bank account in Nigeria. The bank account is known. The GoFundMe account is available for anybody who wants to see it. It's reporting as you are donating how much is donated into it. And this is where we derive our funding from. And we have challenged anybody since this started 9 months ago, precisely, almost maybe about 10 months ago when I started. I've been called all kinds of things, all kinds of allegations have been thrown my way. You're working for Tinubu. I challenge them to show if you've ever seen me at Tinubu's house before, I had challenged people to understand that when I was a student union leader at the University of Lagos, nationally prominent, as you like to say, Tinubu was not as prominent as I was at that time. And it's important that we continue to let people know this mistaken assumption that because you don't have godfathers, you can't be president of Nigeria, is part of what is driving that kind of narrative. And I have conviction that most people have come to that understanding that we are not in this for fun. This is serious business.
So, Nigerians are also interested.
Yes.
Why didn't you run for National Assembly or the Senate? Why did you choose to start from the top?
It's a function of self-confidence. It's a function of qualification. It's a function of right. That at the age of 47, I'm very, very qualified to be president of Nigeria. The people that I am running against now, or that are running against me, started even much younger than I am now. President Buhari was president for the first time in 1983 when he was in his 40s. Atiku Abubakar first contested as a presidential aspirant of the Social Democratic Party in 1992 when he was 42 years old or thereabout. And at that point, he had never been a senator, he had never been a councillor, he had never been a state governor. He became a state governor for the first time, I think, in 1999. He won the governorship of Adamawa, and then he was recruited to become vice president of Olusegun Obasanjo. So I don't know where the argument is coming from. There is no constitutional provision that you must be a local government councillor first before you become president. But for those who might be saying that, they want you to build experience, I've already addressed the experience question, that I have experience that if you put together cumulatively, it's probably stronger than all of the candidates, as many of the candidates combined together. I'm an experienced fighter, all right? And I decided that at this time, what Nigeria needs to solve Nigeria's problem tonight is not a position that I can take standing as a local government chairman or standing as a senator or as a House of Rep member. It's a position that I can take as president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. As I'm speaking with you tonight, the northeastern part of Nigeria is in turmoil. Boko Haram is overrunning major military bases as we speak. They are doing it now. And the commander-in-chief of the armed forces is somewhere in Uyo.
I'll come to that when we discuss.
Skelewu, and that is to tell you that they don't get their priorities right. So, but I understand it well enough where I should have been tonight if I'm president. What I'll be doing tonight if I was president, when I become president of Nigeria next year.
Okay, I want us to paint the issue of security.
Yes.
We'll take that from the table very soon because it's very hot. There's a lot to discuss there. Just recently, the immediate past chief of defense staff was mercilessly executed. So if somebody like that can be killed, then nobody is safe. But I would come back to that.
Yes.
I still want to ask you, how do you intend to deal or relate with the legislature? Nigerians make jokes. They say that we are senators and legislators.
Yes.
How do you hope to deal or cope or work with them? What is your strategy for getting your programs supported by the legislature, knowing fully well what is happening in a place like America now that it's tough getting things through them? How do you hope to achieve this?
So I'm going to be president of Nigeria and I'll be working for the people of Nigeria. I'm also hoping that Nigerians in this election cycle will be voting for legislators and non-legislators, so that, as you are choosing President Omoyele Sowore as your presidential candidate during this election, you are also voting for a candidate that will be working in your own interest, so that we don't have to have that kind of clog in the wheel of progress. But in case we have a bunch of people who are not going to be acting in the interest of their own people, there are ways through which people can deal with their senators if they are not representing their interests. They can be recalled easily from the National Assembly if they want to do it. But in general, my relationship will be very, very open, transparent, and direct. I am presenting our programs and agenda to them that would help the Nigerian nation climb out of poverty, insecurity, and chaos. And if they refuse to work with such a government, I think the people will be the final arbiter as to how to deal with them. But I will deal with them respectfully. I have said that all the respect all other arms of government deserve in relating with how we govern will be given to them. They'll get their due. But what I will tell you as I'm sitting in front of you here is that I'm not going to bribe a single lawmaker to pass budgets.
That's fine,
Yes.
Omoyele.
Yes.
So many people, including all your admirers, they're really not comfortable with your style.
Yeah.
They think you can be very, very brash, you can be undiplomatic.
Yes.
How do you intend to do this so that you can at least win many more people. There are people out there who felt you even disrespected the Ooni of Ife when you went to the palace.
A lot of people have seen me in the last 9 months for the first time. A lot of people didn't know where I was coming from, and I think it is now that some of these very short clips of my past are coming out, that people are coming to the understanding that I've been around for long enough to understand how to relate with society and all the players within the Nigerian society, because I know so many of them. I've known so many of them for 30 years or more, and I'm not brash, I'm just not willing to be anybody's stool, so that people cannot climb over me easily. When you talk about the issue of the Ooni of Ife, what I requested is that, that respect would beget respect. Because I see how other presidential aspirants go to palaces of traditional rulers, and because they are rich, because they are popular, they wait for them at the airport, in the sun, in the rain sometimes. And when it was my turn, I was there in the palace for 3 hours and left without any courtesy, without being told how long I have to wait. And all I did was to say, look, as a human being, that was not right. That's not brash. I'm just, that's not brash. I'm just acting out, to ensure that I'm respected, and those people who followed me are given the respect that is due to them. And
maybe what people were expecting,
yes,
was that you would say go to hell in such a way that the person would look forward to the trip.
That probably is the same way. I cannot express myself the same way everybody expresses themselves. We're not born the same way. We're not trained the same way. We're not characteristically the same way. What I did was to express myself the way how best I know how to express myself. And I think the destination of the person who said it diplomatically and the person who said it the way I said it will still be the same. But I think looking back, a lot of people have come to understand that probably they were wrong about me, and we're getting so much support now because of that. So they've seen me, they've seen that I have my own very unique way of doing things.
All right. I'm thinking we may end up discussing for 1 hour or more this evening, as much as we can go. But I also want to make sure that we take all issues and exhaustively discuss them.
No problem.
Okay?
We can always
I don't want to be where we were that were. So I want you to be very, very relaxed.
I am.
We are a multicultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnic. Literacy level is not as high as it should be. What is good about Nigeria? What really is it that would make you rally Nigerians to say, yes, this is our country. Let's live for it. Let's die for it.
Okay. I always say that what is good about Nigeria is what made me to run for office in the first place. And interestingly, what is good about Nigeria is not limited to Nigeria or inside of Nigeria alone. I traveled extensively and saw how great the person called Nigerian is, how they excelled in different areas, professionally, how they excelled in schools outside of here, how they excelled, in companies and organizations outside of Nigeria, and how they're struggling within too. So what is good about Nigeria are the Nigerian people, not oil, not gold, not silver. Is that the investment that has not been made is why we haven't seen how great Nigerians are. Otherwise, we're probably some of the hardest working people in the world. We're the most tenacious, most resilient.
So how do you plan to harness the Nigerian strength?
Yes, it's going to happen by way of our programs, which we have defined in 10 ways, called Spice Our Heat. Now, first is that you cannot get the best out of Nigerians in this condition, the condition they're in now. In a condition where they are insecure or they feel insecure in their own country and are running away, in a condition where they don't have electricity, they don't have access to health, they don't have access to clean water, they don't have access to schools, they don't have access to motorable highways, They don't have access to anything that can bring out the best out of them. Let me give you an example, right, of someone, what happened to me once when I went to apply for a scholarship when I was still at the university. They said to all of us sitting in that room that you have to have a first class for you to qualify. I think it's an oil company. When it was my turn, they asked why I came to apply for scholarship knowing that I didn't have first class. And my response to them, startled them. I said, if you come from where we come from, with the pollution of the water, the air, and the land where we come from, how can somebody have first class? It blew their mind that I had that kind of audacity to confront them with their own hypocrisy. So if you don't invest in people, how can you harness the people to give you the best? So the investments have to come first before you can be throwing harness around. Nigerians are already well trained. They're asking for a country they can come back to. There are a lot of doctors out there who are performing wonders. There are engineers, computer scientists, name it, who are doing wonders out there, even within Nigeria. But because the environment is not favorable for them to give their best, the environment is not even favorable to do good when you want to do it for free. How would you do anything for your country, when the country is so emasculating? So that's the leader that Nigeria needs next is the one that invests in all of this and open this space for everybody to thrive and flourish. And then you'll be surprised at how fast we can grow. Even our GDP will grow astronomically as soon as we start getting it right on those sometimes small levels. In the last few days, everywhere I speak, I talk about Ghana, right? Because I've traveled a lot between Nigeria and Ghana, between the US and Ghana.
Not about China.
No, I don't make comparison between Nigeria and anywhere outside of Africa anymore, because it's very easy to shoot down an argument in which you are comparing Nigeria to China. Somebody will always say that, it took China 200 years, it took America 200 years. But then we are making comparison between Ghana and Nigeria, because these days if you go to Ghana, people are sending you pictures of the airport as if they went to the moon.
I like where we go to, which brings me to something that is very, very worrisome.
Yes.
We are in a recession, but the consumption of alcohol has gone through the roof. The companies manufacturing, distributing, selling alcohol are declaring good profits, even in the recession. The youths are consuming drugs at alarming proportion.
Yes.
Tramadol has been taken off the streets. Now they are snuffing petrol and other intoxicants. What are you going to do if elected as president to address the rescue?
So let me say this to you. I'm glad you mentioned alcohol in particular. Do you know why people are consuming alcohol?
I am interested.
Yes, it's that there's always a nexus between unemployment, and what I would call psychological destabilization of people and the consumption of substances in general. But another thing that will shock you is that when governments are doing very bad, they make drugs available to their people so they can put them to sleep. In fact, there was a time in the Congo under Mobutu Sese Seko that he was secretly and eventually publicly, promoting, subsidizing alcohol so that their people can be getting drunk, so that they don't think about their social political conditions. So it's part of the conditioning process. How do you take kids off drugs? Of course, you can preach all you want. First, they have to have other things they're doing. You have to get them jobs. They have to have good schools to go to. Most of the kids that are sniffing drugs are people who are out there. They have nothing else to do. They have nothing to live for, and everything that's out there that can kill is killing them. We are not in a recession. We are in a depression. We are in a national depression. So it's not correct to claim that we're in a recession. We are completely in a depression. We are economically in a depressive state. We are politically in a depressive state. We are even spiritually. Let me to go there.
I will not take you on that.
So when you go to that level, what do you think people do? They rely on what can keep their spirits, their bodies high. It's the fake way of just staying afloat and But you asked me specifically, and I don't want that to escape our audience. What are we going to do? We have to address all of the issues through specific programs. Even the drug rehabilitation programs that needs to come. We have to come after you have found people jobs. You can rehabilitate people today and they go back to drugs the next day, because our system is there to encourage anything that's negative. If you give money to the current officials in Nigeria to rehabilitate people, they will embezzle the money, and not make it available to people who deserve it. It got to a point, Reverend, that Bill Gates, who traditionally don't argue with government officials, came to Nigeria and had to cry out. He said it, and it's exactly what I'm saying to you. Invest in your youth so that you can have prosperity. And he didn't say that, we should buy them visas or tickets to leave the country. He said invest, because that's what every country in the world is doing. People are not consuming more drugs here in Nigeria than they are in America. They are not. In fact, if you look at it, the biggest destination of highly potent drugs is Europe and America.
But those are documented. It's not documented in the case of Nigeria.
What I'm telling you is that who is documenting them? Most of them are illegally entering the US. It gets to the street first before you find out. But they are doing something about it because they are addressing it holistically. They are not just saying, hey, everybody is high. You are talking about petrol. People are sniffing soakeways in Nigeria. They are sniffing the algaes on the side of gutters. Sewage system here. And let me shock you again. The biggest drug epidemic in this country is in Daura, President Buhari's hometown. Go and find out. This is official. The young people there are the ones that are most affected in the northern part of Nigeria, and by extension in Nigeria. Go and check this out officially.
So, what do you plan to do to enhance the literacy level of Nigerians?
So there are 13 million kids out of school already, right? We're not making the right investments in education. We are not doing it because it's not important to our leaders to educate our youth. And the reason they don't educate people is, of course, the reason we are where we are today. They know that if they had invested in education, it would be very difficult to run Nigeria the way they run it now, because people would have risen up.
But they are investing in education. Their kids are in very nice schools.
I'm talking about education.
Nigeria.
That's what I'm saying. Education for the question you're asking me. I'm talking about the education of their children. They're investing in the education of their children, but not in the education of Nigerian kids. The cost of educating the child of a senator or a governor is equivalent to running maybe 20 schools in a state. And I know this because there is a primary school in London, I think in the UK they call it Eton. I think it's Eton. It's a primary school and secondary school combined together. I think their annual cost about 1.8 million pounds per child. Is where the richest of the richest go to the place. It's mostly Nigerian. I mean, there are a lot of Nigerian. I won't say mostly. A lot of Nigerian kids there. And if you invest 1.8 million pounds here in Ondo State, it will probably open up to 50 schools, equip them properly, with teachers. So we have to make the right investment. It has to start from primary school. We have been very specific about it in our party, that we will invest on every child 100,000 naira, take them out of the streets. And what that immediately cost us, assuming there are 30 million kids out there who are not in school, is 1.3 trillion naira. And it's the right investment. Before you shout that is going to cost...
It's just 25% of the...
Yes.
25%.
No, before you even complain about the thing, ask yourself, how much do we spend on prisoners per day? We spend 14,000 per day.
That's what the Minister of Interior said.
To feed a prisoner.
I hope you know all the figures we threw today will be fact-checked by Nigerians.
No. Look, the fact-checking is not my job if it came from a minister. Yeah. You have to hold the minister to fact-check it.
Well,
I'm throwing government figures at you. Yeah. I didn't make it up. It's the Minister of Interior, Dambazo, that said that. So, that means in a month, it will cost Nigeria to maintain a prisoner what it could have cost to maintain a child, keep a child in school for a year. And the easiest way to keep the prisons functioning the way they are is not to send children to school. I'm not in any way insinuating that if people go to school, they won't end up in prison. A lot of these political leaders we have went to school and they should be in prison. But in Nigeria, it's the wrong people that are in prison. The right people who are supposed to be in prison are not in prison. In fact, a lot of people in prison today are waiting trial. People were arrested in the streets of Lagos for wandering, an offense that doesn't exist in our law books anymore. So the same thing should happen to secondary schools. Open up the secondary school system, put in teachers. We have plans to put in 200,000 teachers immediately into our school system. We have plans to even give study allowances to students. I went to the US at the age of 27. I had already graduated from the University of Lagos, got to the US before 4 years in the US. After 2 years in the US, I was entitled to student loans and what they call, as a grant that I also got. I wasn't even a US citizen. I just have been around for 2.5 years. I applied to Columbia University. They showed me the student aid thing. I applied for it. By evening, I'd already gotten loan that was enough to help me pay my rent for the year. Wow. Yes. Although I had to pay back, I'm still paying back today, but it was available for me as a known citizen of the US. There are citizens that are entitled to a number of opportunities like that. And that's the same thing we must do for our students in Nigeria. And we also intend to give them study allowances so that every semester, a Nigerian student, wherever you're going to school, you should be able to draw 900,000 and study allowance for yourself. Sure. You need to pay for school, and when you graduate, if you work in the public sector, you take the money away. If you go and work in the private sector, you pay us back so that we can give it to other kids.
Right. I wanted to draw your attention to something.
Yes.
And that is the fact that quite a lot of the challenges that we seem to face are because of lack of adequate planning.
Yes.
If you put 1 million kids in primary school,
yes,
they're going to go from class 1 to 6.
To 6, yes.
After 6 years, you must be ready to receive 1 million kids in the secondary school.
Absolutely.
But what you see, which is a challenge, is that we don't have the data to be able to plan ahead for what our requirements are. How many doctors do we need? How are we training people to be medical doctors? How are we training people to be agricultural biologists? So how will you bring back metrics into governance such that we will know exactly where we are going from where we are?
So this is what I will do first. Before I will start this hunt for data, I will first of all capture the data that's in existence already. And I can show you 5 to 7 places where you can harvest data already in Nigeria. Usable data. You can get it from phone companies. Everybody that has a telephone in this country almost has his fingerprint somewhere. It's got his name somewhere. You add that to INEC records of everybody that's 18 years old and above. You add that to the passports of every Nigerian, whether they are old or young, from the immigration departments, right? You add that to the bank records of BVN. Almost everybody in Nigeria has a bank account today, when you reach the... I don't think there's age restriction as to opening a bank account, right? You add that to the National Identity Card database. If you sync all of this data, start working from there, and then you go out and look for data. Of course, there's also a National Population Commission data, right?
The National Identity Management Commission is already doing that.
And that's what I'm saying. What I'm trying to tell you, Reverend, is that we have enough data to start with. Yes, before I go after a big data hunt. And all we just need to sync and secure the data, because right now the data is all over the place. Everybody has access to.
So how will you use it? That's my interest.
So the moment we have it, first and foremost, within the parameters that I have just spoken to you about, you can figure out who is 18 and above and tell how many people are looking for jobs, how many people should be going to school, people who have reached, school age. We can also go back to secondary school and know how many kids are in school. Go to primary schools and know how many kids are in primary school. Because these are areas where you harvest data without having to remove your teeth, And Nigeria, so when you mention that we don't plan, it's not as if we don't plan, but we simply don't have people who are capable of even maintaining any of the plans that we should have, or plans that are easy to maintain. The low-hanging fruits that are there is unbelievable. What I'm trying to tell you is that sometimes they throw these excuses at us, some of them academic excuses. You don't have data, so because of that, you throw up your hand. What about the data you have? There's no state in Nigeria that cannot tell you roughly how many secondary schools they have. And if you know how many secondary schools you have, what you start breaking it down is how many students should be in a classroom for a teacher to be able to teach effectively. I want to tell you that, they said somebody should switch off the TV, right? Please, can we do that? I want to tell you that we met a number of National University Commission officials one day somewhere and asked them, can you tell us how many students are in universities across Nigeria? They don't know. Please, can you help use the remote to switch off the TV? Thank you. Thank you. They don't know, right? They have no idea. They kept referring us to, go to the department in charge of news. So they don't know. But what I'm saying is that should that be an official secret to know the number of students? So what we found out is that, okay, how many universities do you have in Nigeria? I think they're about, federal, I think it's about almost 50 federal universities in Nigeria. The largest is the University of Calabar. They have about 45,000 students, I think.
They have more students than you are?
Yes, I think so.
Interesting.
Yes, that's what we found out as we were doing our research.
Which leads me to a question that is very, very, very burning in the mind of people. ASUU strike. What is so difficult about it? How would you tackle it?
So why is it that ASUU is been on strike? Why have they consistently gone?
Because they are now a labor force instead of a teaching force.
Yeah, well, you see, don't let us reduce ASUU's problem to, some kind of acrimony between ASUU and the public. It's true that they go on strike in a way that's made people frustrated. But the question we should ask ourselves is, why is ASUU going on strike? Government goes with ASUU into a room. They said, we have agreed to release this amount of money to the investors. When we were there, it was 1.3 billion naira. Right? Government cannot will refuse to release this money. Whenever instead of releasing the money to ASUU, they're going to release money to things that are not relevant, right? So that's what ASUU is asking for. But this is how we handle it. There is a lot of money right now, if not up to 1 trillion naira, in the education tax fund. There's also another higher institution tax intervention fund as well.
Third fund.
Third funds, These funds are being treated as slush funds. What I'll do is to set them aside and get ASUU and some Nigerians to manage the funds with student leaders as part and parcel of the system that is managing the fund. You don't need
Won't you create more monsters?
It's not going to create. So if ASUU is managing a fund, let them come and tell me that they are going on strike over a fund that they are managing. Then it will now be between them and the public. ASUU is made up of professors, right? Decent economists, decent mathematicians. Let them be the ones managing the fund. The fund is there. Set up ASUU students, put a government administrative person in place to manage that fund by ASUU. So ASUU is not looking for a fund that is not in existence. The funding is there, but how are we using that fund now? We are using them as slush funds. You put the friend or the brother or the wife of the president as the executive secretary of that fund. They steal everything they can find in the place. The money will build up again, they put another thief there. You steal everything they can find. This is what I've been reporting for 12 years as our reporters. And then occasionally they will build one building in the middle of the campus somewhere. After 2 years, the thing is gathering dust and algae and it's falling apart because it is not doing intervention. Let universities be the ones determining what they want the money for, not government nominating projects on campus. Okay, we want to build an auditorium. What if they don't need auditorium? You know, maybe they want student hostels. You know, and they'll tell you that, oh, we don't want hostels, but the rich people are building houses around universities and collecting money from students in the name of rent. Why can't the universities have hostels so that the students can have a place to live and they can pay the university or they can pay the government, you know, a little amount of money? We can even do it for free. What's the big deal about that? Because that investment we are making is necessary for the future of the country. If I didn't have subsidized accommodation, I wouldn't have been able to. When I went to the University of Lagos, my father could not afford 40 naira, which was the school fees.
14 naira.
40 naira.
40.
Yes. It was a teacher who had not been paid at that time for 6 months. And I got admission. I took the letter to my father in the village in Ondo State. He said, look, he gave me 15 naira. And then gave me a letter to my uncles in Lagos. He said, go and be going to their houses. Tell them you got admission. Then accommodation was 90 naira. He couldn't afford it too. So what did I do? When eventually I found money to pay for my first year, second year, I went and joined the swimming team at the University of Lagos. Because as a sports person, you are not required to pay for accommodation. So, and I was a good swimmer. So I swam for my hostel and was in the school swimming team, doing very well. That was how I avoided paying accommodation for second year. So I paid the 45 naira for school, and then I became a student activist. And then subsequently out of school, they kept expelling me. So if you expel a student, you can't ask them to come and pay school fees. So I was expelled for the rest of the time I was at the University of Lagos. Nobody came to ask me for school fees because I was not on record officially as a student. Nobody dare come ask me for school fees. That was how I graduated from the university. I remember only paying school fees the first year and partially the second year. But a lot of people have to deal with that who have parents out there who can afford all of this. How do you expect them to send their children to school? But you have a rich governor, when you're a governor, your child is sent to school abroad. Your wife is sent to have children abroad. Your daughter is sent somewhere else to go and build a house for you. This country is a crime scene. I'm telling you, crime scene. And we have to rescue the country before it collapses completely. And if it does, it will affect all of us. But it will affect the whole world.
Sowore, how do you plan to revive the economy? Yes, things are very tough.
Yes.
What agenda do you have to repair the Nigerian economy?
So, when you talk about reviving the economy, you have to put things in place to have an economy that is working. Right? There was a time they would accuse me when I was doing Sahara report that I was scaring foreign investors because of the reporting that we're doing about Sahara report. It was the most laughable thing I was accused of. Who is going to invest in it? All you need to do is just type Nigeria in Google. All the information that will come in: Boko Haram, kidnappers, armed robbers. There's no foreign investors that is coming near you. But interestingly, there are foreign investors in Nigeria, but they are not investing in the Nigerian people. They are investing in themselves. They come in here, take the money, and just take off. In fact, they come and self-deal in our stock exchange markets where they invest in short-term, they do short-term investment. They crash the markets, take their money and run away. Nobody's even paying attention to all these things because our leaders don't know what they're doing. So in reviving the economy, let me answer your question. You have to make the country secure. Because I said that because the country is insecure. You have to invest in security. You have to invest in power, electricity, Reverend. If you don't have electricity, you can't have industrial level economy. Every other thing about this economic conversation is PowerPoint discussion. It has no meaning if you don't have power, if there's no energy. Energy is the life of every economy. So if you don't have resources that can power the economy from the energy side.
Our economy runs on generators.
That's what I'm telling you. Have you ever seen any country that is run on a generator before? How do your companies compare?
Maybe the Gambia. The Gambia runs on generators.
Or compete with a Chinese person who's got electricity. what the US consumes in electricity per day, maybe let me put it this way: what we generate per year is probably what the US consumes per day in electricity.
Wow.
Yes, I'm telling you, it's something you can find out. So all of our electrical grid, production in Nigeria is probably not enough to run the London Underground.
We're generating more than 4 megawatts now.
We are doing 4,000 megawatts. They said it's 4,000 megawatts. I don't think we're more than 3,000 megawatts at any point in time. It's peanuts. South Africa has about 62,000 megawatts of electricity.
If you get elected, what would you be pushing generation to?
Maybe 24,000 megawatts immediately.
24,000.
And we plan to do that in 2.5 years.
But it is said that we also have problems with transmission. The transmission lines
all I'm telling you, generation, transmission, and distribution. All of it is. You generate, you transmit, and you distribute to. So Egypt just did it. They generated 14,500 megawatts of electricity, and it was at the point they hooked it up to 40 million people that they made it claim. And it was done between a local company in Egypt, Orascom, Siemens, and it was done in about 27 months.
Talking about
7.2 billion, but PDP spent $16 billion and generated the most amount of darkness that mankind has ever seen.
Talking about distribution,
Yes.
it is alleged that the contract that Nigeria has entered into with the discos
Yes.
is such that we cannot terminate the contract. They are distributing darkness now. What will you do if you get elected to kick out the discos and take the power back?
So we have to. I don't want to speak because we're talking about fact checking the other time. I don't want to speak about something I've not seen the contract before, but I won't be surprised that they did that. If there's any contract that makes it impossible for Nigerians to have electricity, that contract is legal by virtue of its anti-people's position. There's no contract that can be more important than
So you treat it as a treasonable thing against the state.
It will be treated the way it portrays itself, and that's all I can say. If the contract that generates darkness and we are trying to generate electricity, then the contract has to be discarded and abandoned immediately. So I don't think that would be something difficult. But I want to see the contract first, so that I don't make any assumptions. But I won't be surprised.
So what sectors of the economy require critical and urgent attention beyond petroleum, for example?
I think the thing to understand is that the economy is no longer without knowledge. In fact, most modern economies across the world are driven. They're knowledge-driven economies, and it's part of the reason why we want to focus heavily on technology. Technology is what most of the companies that are doing the best, even in the stock markets across the world, are tech companies right now. And we have the capability. I found out a few days ago that Silicon Valley is very interested in students that are graduating from FUTA. That is, FUTA, according to, I think there's a Covenant University, and about 3 universities in Nigeria are producing computer science graduates that are capable of competing internationally, even against all the odds of going to school. I'm not digressing.
No, it's fine. Yes. I am very interested in this.
So we have to start thinking progressively about, because how do we start to even think about tapping into the Nigerian human resource so that they bring back to us billions and billions of investment into this country, or the knowledge that people have can also become a source of huge revenue the same way it is doing for countries around the world right now, and that's where we are. But beyond that, agriculture is very, very important. It is nothing as powerful as food security when it comes to a country that has 200 million people. Right? I've spoken about energy, but I'm pivoting away from petroleum. fossil fuel into real renewable energy. In terms of, we want to develop solar. Because that's what brought Egypt to where I was discussing earlier. It's a combination of mix of solar, gas, and hydro.
So let me rewind a bit. First, you mentioned getting Nigerians to compete favorably in the knowledge economy.
That's right.
Which is great.
Yeah.
In the 80s and 90s.
And this is coffee, by the way. I'm not doing drugs.
Enjoy your coffee. Now, in the 80s and 90s, quite a lot of Nigerians were emigrating to Saudi Arabia and other Arabian countries to take up jobs as doctors, nurses. They were well sought after, and they made good money. They were repatriating it to Nigeria. The saying then was that there is brain drain.
Yes.
Now, as you rightly observed, quite a lot of developing countries are interested in our programmers and those who understand IT.
Yes.
And they have been taken again out of Nigeria. Yes. Before then, it was our footballers. For a long time, very many footballers were applying their trade in Europe for peanuts. Yeah. Not supported by the government. Yeah. What program would you have to make sure that knowledge Nigerians that have skills can apply their skills and trade anywhere in the world, and they can be properly remunerated and compensated for their knowledge?
So, I don't think that all Nigerian doctors are still not being sought after. If you go to the Caribbean, probably you see a lot of Nigerian doctors. That's their entry to the US. Doctors and nurses are still being well sought after in Saudi Arabia. You even see the adverts all the time. Our footballers are still well sought after. We are exporting even culturally movies to other parts of the world. I don't think that the Nigerian government can decide how people are. People are already being well remunerated, and we are even seeing that in terms of investment. Repatriation of back to Nigeria. Of revenues back to Nigeria. The Nigerian diaspora is the second largest source of revenue into this country every year. Most people don't know it. Over $50 billion is sent to Nigeria officially every year.
That's more than our foreign debt.
Yes, and our it's more than our foreign debt. It's more than our national revenue from oil. I think by night I support, because yesterday I was having a conversation downstairs with an oil sector, an energy person, and he was saying that what Nigeria makes every year from oil is about $35 billion from royalties, taxes, and the joint venture cash that they get. But the diaspora is sending back home over 50 billion naira. So people are doing well, The brain drain though is still going on every day, In fact, everything we have is being drained, brain, legs, body and soul. That's the truth. But there's also a gain from it. What we need to do, or what we do, is to have some kind of a brain gain. And what they did in India, in China, is what we can use here. What India did in getting back all their doctors, that's why everybody is going to India now for every treatment in the world. In fact, some Americans go to India to seek medical treatment because it's cheaper to do that in India than it is in the US. Their health system in the US is one of the most expensive. So is that they prepare the ground for the diaspora to return back home. But the way they did it is not to make a law. They started investing in electricity. I think the current leaders in India has been able to electrify every part of India. There's no town or village, according to what I learned. Again, this could be fast checked, I'm not very sure. There's virtually no part of India today that is not hooked to the national grid in terms of electricity. So if somebody wants to return home from the US or Europe, they want to at least have electricity. Yes. They want to be sure that the country is secure so that they are not kidnapped on their way to the airport or before they arrive home. They want to have good roads upon which to drive from one point to the other and arrive at their destination safe. Those are the things that our people are looking for. The moment you start making these things available and possible for them, people will return home. I have lived abroad for 19 years myself, and I can tell you that there are so many Nigerians that are itching to come back home, even to come and offer their services for free. I know of doctors who are retired in the US who said they can still give 10 more years of medical practice to Nigeria if they are given the opportunity to come back home. But they want to be safe. They want to have a place or system in place that can allow them buy a house, so a mortgage system, the same that they have in the US. And the moment you start putting all these structures in place, people will start returning home. They will bring back their money, they bring back their expertise, they will bring back their knowledge, and they bring back everything. Probably most people who left Nigeria as doctors, maybe they are somehow even partially trained. By the time they get there, they will have acquired more, and they are willing to bring it back home. But you have to create an enabling environment. Sometimes I reduce it to the airport. Even an airport to land in, and not be depressed, you need it. Nigeria is the only airport that I have been, and I'm using my 9 months experience running for president, that is the worst. It's the worst. This country has some of the worst airports in the world.
So what would you do to change them? I mean, what type of airports do you want to see?
Oh my goodness! If when I become president next year,
Nigeria is the only place in the world where 2 people look at your passport when you are going in. First SSS and then immigration.
Oh, that's rubbish. Yeah.
In other sane climates, one person looks at your passport and can refer it to any of the agencies behind.
It's not even that difficult. That's not going to be my headache. My headache, the day I get to office, I'll dismantle the departure and the arrival halls. I'm serious. Those places are a disgrace, But those are personnel changes that need to happen. You don't need that many people doing Babiala on arrival or departure. When you are leaving the US, the moment you see your airline, the only place you cross is the people ensuring that you're not carrying anything that can blow up the plane. If you're carrying more money than you should, the customs the custom people might come to the gate of the aircraft and find out, try to find out, but you don't see them. You don't see uniformed persons harassing you and ask you questions. I think maybe they do it in the UK. I think I saw it in Paris. They have a departure procedure but it's not as rowdy and as chaotic and as disgraceful as we have. But those are personnel.
So if you dismantle departure and arrival, how will that get done? How won't they have
as currently composed? Let's say as currently composed. Okay. What you just do is, look, the moment you finish with the airline, the next people you see are the airport security, ensuring that what you are carrying is safe to be on board. Those SSS immigration upon departure, or the ones that are seizing yam and palm oil, that's nonsense. That's supposed to be the agriculture. But if you go right now, all the security agencies are there, except the Nigerian police. But the police is waiting for you before you enter the departure lounge, and then from there you meet the NDLA. After the NDLA, you see SSS. After you see SSS, you see immigration. Then there was a day another group came to me and said that national security. I've never even heard about them before. The bottom line is you just set up these extortion rackets at the airport, which is disgraceful. And that's why it takes you almost 4 hours to depart Nigeria. You are advised to come 4 hours before because of this unnecessary bottlenecks.
Don't you think Nigerians can sometimes also be overbearing? If you give them the opportunity, they will export everything.
Look, if you want to export anything today, you can export it still with all these people. They will help you carry it inside the plane. Okay. So they are not helping you to prevent export of anything. They are there to extort people who are not exporting anything. The people who are exporting things, they don't pass through that place. They escort them through different channels.
VIP treatment.
Yes.
All right, so Omoyele, what do you plan to do in terms of restructuring the polity right now, so that at least things can happen differently?
You know, the reason I'm smiling a little bit about it is I have spoken consistently about restructuring since we started this campaign, and told everybody who gets to listen that people are shouting restructuring are not talking about restructuring Nigeria, that they are talking about restructuring their pockets. And a lot of people at the beginning said, oh, you don't believe in restructuring, until all the restructuring advocates went and lined up behind Atiku. That was all they wanted to do. Did Atiku believe in restructuring? Of course, no. Has he spoken about restructuring since they started? Probably no. You know, so I agree with those who are making the argument that at this point Nigeria has been around for so long, the Federation of Nigeria needs to be taken care of, it needs to be fixed. We need to look at things differently. I have even spoken to an extreme level in which I have said that the Nigerian Constitution itself is a fraudulent document, and that document needs to be discarded, and a new one that will pass through a referendum by the Nigerian people should be put in place. What we are asking for is for honest arbiters to restructure Nigeria, young people for whom Nigeria's future is supposed to be redesigned and restructured. And you cannot restructure Nigeria if you are not in the position to restructure Nigeria. You cannot restructure Nigeria when old people start holding, constitutional conferences in which they only appoint themselves or elect themselves to go and fall asleep there. It has to be for the people who are young, whose future is at stake. So our first restructuring step should be an election of a new generation of leaders. And that's part of the reason we step forward and say, let's restructure Nigeria by electing young people or a new set of leaders, so that I don't sound like I have this sense of entitlement or because I'm young I should be president. That's not my argument. A new set of clear-headed leaders who understand what the problems are and what needs to be fixed about Nigeria, then we can start discussing all the great things that come with restructuring. There was a day, I think it was on AIT, it was channels, they asked me about state police. When I broke it down, one lawyer put it on Facebook and said, oh, this guy broke down the restructuring argument in one statement. Because state policing is not a problem if you have other things working for you. In fact, I'm in support of universities having their own police departments. I'm in support of every town in this country that can afford a police department to do it. Let me even make another revelation today. If when we want to start policing, the federal government will borrow to people who don't have police to come and take the police from the Nigerian police. We'll give it to you, like they do in Canada. If there's a town in Canada that needs a police department and they can't afford it, they come and borrow from the federal police and pay a tax to the police, and when they are done or when they set up their own, they can come back to the federal police. That's not our problem. Our problem is, who are the people going to restructure Nigeria? It's not this crop of leaders, not this set of leaders who have never believed even in Nigeria to the point that they have ever done anything good in Nigeria. So you go to another conference or you elect a Buhari or Atiku to go and restructure Nigeria. Who is Atiku's Director General of Campaign? Kola Saraki has been in the Senate for how many years? Have they ever discussed restructuring there? Didn't they have the power as the Senate President to have passed some laws that restructure Nigeria? They never do it. So they are deceiving everybody. And that is why we say, look, get rid of all these people. Vote for the right type of leaders who listen to you and let them restructure the country, But the restructuring is not limited to just state police alone or regional governments. People must have the right to debate the kind of country they also want.
Will it also be that we have a problem with the expensive presidential system of government that we are running?
It's not only possible. I was one of the first persons to propose that I would so strongly support the abolition of the Senate. And when I said it, everybody was on my case. How can you say you want to abolish the Senate? Last month,
the Senate is the retirement home for
thieves,
ex-governors.
No, just call them thieves, and I'm saying it on record. Last month,
don't forget the diplomacy we talked about.
No, I don't want to be diplomatic about calling people their names or their real titles. Last month, about 70 lawmakers signed on to have a parliamentary system of government for Nigeria. What is a parliamentary system of government? It's practically a unicameral legislative body. So they have come to realize that I was right. Well, what do you need a Senate for? In a country that cannot afford to send children to school, you have senators who are taking home 14 million naira per month. And children are out, 30 million children are out of school. So it's a very simple argument that we are overextending our resources on very unproductive sectors of our political system. So we need to limit the size of government, one, but we have to eliminate this wasteful agbada wearing, bodies in the legislative system, and streamline what we can have, what is compact and effective, and let it work for the Nigerian people.
So you think it would be possible to get them to sign off on their own erasure?
This is what I'm saying, that this is up to the Nigerian people now. The country cannot be held to ransom perpetually by a bunch of people. We are saying that there has to be a revolutionary turn to what we are doing now. Our mindset has to change. We cannot continue and forever be complacent about the changes that we need. We have to be very clear about them. These people are strangulating us. They are sucking life out of us. They're sucking oxygen out of our existence.
Let's leave Nigeria a bit.
Yes.
What would be your foreign policy if elected? Would you be looking to the West, or you will be looking to the East or the Far East? What sort of alliance would you build?
I'm looking here first.
Foreign policy.
I understand what I'm telling you.
Tell me more.
The foreign policy of Nigeria should be about the Nigerian person first. That is, the protection, respect, dignity, and integrity they should enjoy outside. It's going to be the focus. I know the reason I said that. It's going to be looking here first. So Nigeria's foreign policy has always been an Afrocentric kind of foreign policy where we support
to make every life count in Nigeria?
Well, so we have to understand all the areas where we feel insecure right now, Nigeria is facing major terrorism threats from militants on the Islamist front. But we also have serious problem of, crime, kidnapping, robbery, and a lot of petty crimes around the country separately, It is sad, that the same Nigerian army that ended 2 wars in West Africa, Sierra Leone and Liberia, cannot fight Boko Haram. It's corruption. Corruption is a major issue. People are benefiting and profiting from the continuation and the prolongation of the war. You have heard stories of how monies that were supposed to be used in buying weapons were diverted, including by the man who was killed Bade a few days ago. In fact, if police investigation revelation were to be true, he was doing a land transaction with cash because he wanted to evade,
his accounts are frozen anyway.
Yes, but that means that he still got a lot of cash somewhere. So when you look at it, isn't an irony that when he was chief of defense staff, he was taking money that was meant to fight Boko Haram for himself. And look at it now. Some of the money that he's trying to hide, he ran into, according to police, armed robbers. And they said they provided him with police protection, Air Force protection. But because of the nature of the transaction, he didn't take his bodyguards with him. He just told them to wait somewhere. He wants to go and do a transaction. That was problem. Again, nothing is final when it comes to the shady
fact.
Yeah, it's not a fact. This is what police told us, but the story could be completely different because there's another narrative that he was having a negotiation with the chief of staff to the president and also the wife of the president. They had meetings with them before he was killed. Who knows? But this is the Nigeria they created, when they were supposed to have done otherwise, at least in public. This is the country that they created. But he's not here to defend himself. We may never find out the truth, but this is what we know. So, but these are the kind of things they did when they were generals in the armed forces. They took care of themselves. When they left, they found money everywhere in their houses, in farms, in sewage tanks, underneath, in overhead.
Soak away Bank of Nigeria.
Yes. It's crazy. These guys they've done their worst to this country, and that's what we are reaping, and that's why we have to stop the bleeding. We have to stop the bleeding of Nigeria as it is now. So what is security is that we must reinvest in equipping our forces. I can reveal to you that most of the propaganda you hear about jets is not true. We probably don't have more than 2 functioning jets.
On the war front?
Yes, that are capable of delivering warheads that can decapitate these guys. That's why you always get from the Air Force, area video tapes of Boko Haram people running around, and they will release, and people keep asking if you saw them Why didn't you annihilate them?
Take them out.
Why are you still circulating video of Boko Haram people jumping on their bicycle and you are following them around? Because most of their jets only have a capability to do camera, area view camera, no capability to deliver consequences. We don't have equipment. That's the truth. Because we are buying fake equipment. The generals are buying fake equipment, are using the rest of the monies to take care of themselves.
But the president recently asked the commanders to relocate to the war front.
Look, that's my next answer. We don't have a commander-in-chief of the armed forces.
We do have President Muhammadu Buhari.
He's not commanding anybody. Is this not the first time? There was a time he asked the IG to relocate somewhere in Benue. The IG went to a party. Yes.
And he was not fired.
Exactly.
So tell me, now that we're even talking about the IG, what is your take on regional police, state police?
I just said I'm in support of state police, but it's not going to.
So would Nigerians need visa to move from Oyo State to Lagos?
No. You don't need visas. I mean, I just mentioned the US. Every town and city in the US has their own. They have. So the US has a federal police, but it's not the uniform wearing type.
There's
the
OPC. There's OPC in Lagos State.
That's exactly where we're going. But what I'm trying to say is that in the US you have state police, they have county police, then every town has its own police department. Every campus in the US has its own police department. And you don't need visa to move around the US. It's just how federations work. It's how federations work. And that's how a federal system ought to work. That's why I'm saying that I'm in support of state police. But you have to also prepare yourself for governors who are not paying teachers. Now, if they don't pay police that are armed, you have armed robbers on your hands. So then you will need a visa to move from state to state.
The day is far gone. I still want us to discuss two things before we bring this very interesting discussion to a close. I came to interview you, but I ended up having a discussion which is quite interesting. So I want you to give us a peek into your plans to make Nigeria self-sufficient in food production. We need to feed our population.
Yeah, we have our plans are very clear. We need to go to every local government and invest in agriculture. So what are we going to do immediately? We want to empower agricultural entrepreneurs. The reason why our food security system, our agri system is so antiquated or outdated is because we are still using people don't understand that agriculture is also technology now, and technology must be applied to agriculture. So we want agricultural entrepreneurs, 1,000 per local government, and what they will do is exactly look at each local government where they are. What is it that you can grow in a place? It's not an Operation Feed the Nation type of slogan. You are growing real fence. So if you come from Ilaje, Seldo in Ondo State, it's fishing that might be your agricultural output in the place. Focus on it and feed, ship your fish to every part of the country. If you're in Adamawa State, fishing might actually be it. Fish sufficiently, But again, this must work in tandem with other projects, other programs we have. Because if you fish in Ilaje and you cannot take your fish to the market before they get rotten, we are wasting our time. So we have to have a road network system that can aid that post-harvest process for us. If we are going to be growing, ginger or and other products, there's no way in Nigeria that something can't grow. There's a joke somewhere we went, I think in Benue State, that if you spit on the ground, it will grow. So it's how how great this country is, and that will provide employment. And a lot of these people that are currently even engaging in crime and engaging in terrorism might be able to find something else to do. Baga, that is falling today, is one of the biggest fishing communities in Nigeria. Yes, in the northeastern part of Nigeria, because they fish from Lake Chad. and they fail today, that is going to definitely affect food security. Boko Haram's control of a large swath of land is part of the reason why you also have the herdsmen crisis, because instead of going uptown to go and feed their cattle, they have to be forced down south, and they have to fight farmers along the way. And I think, agriculture is not also limited to just growing things. It also has to do with innovation. So in that regard, we have proposed to have commercial ranching, so that the 20 million cows that we have that are roaming about the country can be put in different ranches where people can go to work. A ranch is not just a place where you can keep cows. A ranch is a place that can have a school. So teachers can teach, they can have a hospital or a clinic where doctors can be working, both veterinary and human doctors. And the ranch is a place where the droppings of cows, what they call cow dungs, can also be used for generating electricity. Now you are hearing from a digital candidate.
Right. Before we bring this to an end,
Yes.
you are taking on two very powerful groups.
Yes.
The PDP and the APC. Why don't all the young candidates come together and forge a common front? Why is everybody going their own way? Is that sufficient to get the critical mass to dislodge the whole order?
No. Let me say before it is confused that there's never a time in my 30 years as an activist that I've never confronted very powerful forces. It was a time, it was the Nigerian military, the most powerful military on the continent of Africa. We fought them and defeated them in 1999. Before then, I confronted the Vice Chancellor of my university, defeated him before I could graduate from the university.
You finally did.
Before then, I confronted cults in the university, called gangs. They were probably the most dangerous in my lifetime. We survived it. Before then, we also confronted the SDP and the NRC, two political parties created by the military. We defeated them. So I don't actually consider PDP and APC to be, powerful forces. I think we are arrogating to them powers that they don't have. Just like somebody was telling me yesterday that our leaders are brainwashing our people. I said they don't have the brain power to brainwash anybody. Why are we ascribing to them powers that they don't have? But here is my answer to the last question about young people. We have tried all the best we can to bring together some of the young candidates. With due respect, we have also found out that we are not of the same pedigree with these young candidates. They're not the same people. They didn't fight. Some of the candidates were in the university during the military era. They didn't fight the military. I'm a fighter. I've always been fighting my entire life. And that is not to say that you have to be an activist before you can be president.
Absolutely.
But we just don't have the same pedigree. We just don't come from the same background. We don't think the same way. So that is why very quickly when we meet with them, we discover that there's no meeting point. Because they don't want to fight the system. They don't want to rock the boat. As far as we are concerned in our own system, the boat is due for sinking. Not the Nigerian state, but the elite boat that is destroying the Nigerian the nation.
But look at
there's no point pretending that we can somehow keep it afloat when the whole boat is leaking. That's what so many of these young people want to do. They want to be rubbing minds and hands and stomach with the elders.
So you are a digital candidate.
That's right.
You are known on Facebook, you are known on the internet, you are known on your website. How will the grassroots man, the man in Kaura Namuda, the man in Igboho, Ibeti, Igbora, Ahuada, how will they know that you exist and be able to give you their vote?
Because I have passed through all those places.
How many states did you visit
I've
in the course of
visited
your campaign?
32 states already. I have 4 months to go.
Which are those 4 states you've not visited?
I've not been to Bauchi, I've not been to Iboyi, I haven't been to Gombe, and I haven't been to, I think, Yobe. But I've been to every...
So you've been to Maiduguri?
I have, that's why I said Borno.
You've been to Baga?
Baga? No, that's Borno State.
Oh, that's
I haven't been to
Borno
Borno State. But I've been to Kwara and Moda. I've been to a border town called Jimba.
How about Ungeru?
Where's Ungeru?
Zungeru.
Is that where?
That's in, I think it's in
Is that Kaduna State?
Katsina.
Yeah. So we've been to Katsina town. We've been to Daura.
Been to Daura?
Yes, President Buhari's hometown. We were there some 3 weeks ago. You know, we've been to Rivers State. We've been to Bayelsa State. We were in Patani last week. We were in Wari. We were in Akure. We were in Ekiti. You know, we've been to Kogi. We've been to Bini. We've been to Kaduna. We've been to Kano. We've been to Sokoto. We've been to Bini-Kebbi. Where is that place? We've been to Aglungu, where they have the festival. We went to the place where they used to do the fishing festival. So we've been offline and online. Beside that, we've been to about 20, almost 15 cities outside of the country where Nigerians live abroad. In Australia, we did 4 cities. We've done about 7 in the US. We were in South Africa.
But the Aspirants won't vote.
Most of them actually do have PVCs these days. You'll be surprised. They came home and got PVCs. But they have one power that most people underrate. They have the ability to use their money to make people do what they want.
All right, my last question for you.
I hope it's the last one.
It's the last one. My last question for you. How do you hope to promote religious harmony in Nigeria? As a reverend, I want to go to Kaduna State,
yes,
and get C of O to build a church.
Exactly.
That is not possible right now. How do you hope to promote religious harmony in Nigeria? Because we are very, very religious, we are multicultural, we are multi-ethnic. How would you do it?
You know, it's the job of the president of the Federal Republic to protect everybody regardless of what they worship. So as the president of Nigeria, even if you are worshiping a pen, I'll protect you. It will be my job. So if everybody is safe, secure, and protected, the Babalawo also that wants to build a shrine in Kaduna, it should have a right too.
Okay.
Yes. Or a Muslim who wants to build a mosque in Ilaje should have a right too to get a C of O. So because sometimes when we make this conversation, we don't realize that, you know, even people who are Christians don't want Muslims to encroach on their area. People who are Muslims don't want Christians. But here is our problem. It's not the job of the state to be promoting religion. Religion is a private thing. One of the things I will do as president is I will never pay a kobo for somebody to go to Israel or Mecca.
You scrap it. Don't you think you will lose some votes?
I'm going to send your children to school. The money that I will use to send you to Mecca, I will use it to build schools in Zamfara.
But it's a religious
that is why it's
injunction.
It's a private thing, you know. There's no, even the Quran says it, that if you don't have money, wait until you have money before you go to Mecca, you know. And the people of Israel, where we run to every time, they are still waiting for their own savior. As far as they are concerned, we are tourists, right? Why can't we build in Nigeria where everybody too will come and be worshiping something that we have here? You know, like the Oshobo Festival. If there's a lot of African Americans that want to come there too, build in Nigeria where they can come, and that would be an investment. Even you that is a pastor, you will love the business because then there will be enough Americans to pray for.
So the state will build a church for me, for people to come.
It's not the job of the state to build a church for you to come. Okay. It's the job of the pastor and the people who are religious to build their own church. But what I'm saying is that you should enjoy the same protection in Kaduna, you're right, if you're a Christian, as someone who is a Muslim who also has a mosque in anywhere in a part of the country, or someone who wants to operate a shrine anywhere in a part of the country. Everybody should enjoy the same protection. You know, the problem we're having is that the state is showing bias for certain religious entities. And that is what is creating the religious tension that you see. Because people are not stupid. They know that Buhari has more proclivity towards Muslims. And not only Muslims, certain Muslims. Because it's the same Buhari that killed Shiites and buried them in secret graves. Are those ones also not Muslims? Right? But Nigerians are looking for a president this time that has no religious bias. And if you are looking for that president, vote for Sowore, because he will protect everybody, regardless of what you worship and who you worship. And I respect religious freedoms. Anybody, it's the job of the state to curb the excesses of anybody who is acting excessively. But the moment they know that the president is a president of one religion, the other religion will feel uneasy. It happened under Jonathan. It took 600 people to Israel. Then the people want to go to Mecca, will go and meet him too. Your guy, you have to give us the same number of people you took to Israel. Before state resources are wasted on things that the state should have no business with. We should separate the church or the mosque from the state. It's as simple as that. Our constitution says it very clearly. And we should stop violating our constitution.
Thank you very much, Omoyele.
Thank you very
distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I have been talking to the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, AAC, Omoyele Sowore, the presidential candidate and also publisher, Sahara Reporters. I've been engaging him for the past 1.5 hours, and it's been a very interesting discussion. Thank you very much for tuning in with us today. This is the start of very many of this series, because our intention is to give a voice to those who don't have a voice, to even the playing field, so that Nigerians will know that there are better alternatives than PDP and APC and options from which to choose from, so that we can enrich the polity in Nigeria. My name is Rev.Sunday Afolayan. I've been your anchor. Stay tuned on the channel and see you some other time. Omoyele, thank you very much.
Take it back.